Welcome to channel. Today, we explore story filled with unexpected twists. Please, subscribe and like to stay updated. Let's begin. My name is David Stone, and I'm a chef, not the sort you see on television or working a line in a busy kitchen, but one of my own creation. I cook at home, usually for my wife Emily, and sometimes at restaurants I own that Emily manages. About 6 years ago, I used to cook just for my first wife, Olivia. She was the true earner, the CEO of a large film production firm, and let's just say money was not an issue in our family. You see, I am from old money. My grandparents had an extraordinary eye for the stock market, making smart bets that continue to pay off decades later. The money is held in a trust, and I am the only beneficiary. That means I get a consistent income without having to lift a finger, but I prefer to spend my time in the kitchen, experimenting with new dishes and polishing old favorites. It sounds like a dream, right? My life revolves on enthusiasm and creativity. I used to prepare extravagant dinners for my wife, who returned home from her high-pressure work fatigued but thankful. We used to lunch together, share a bottle of wine, and sometimes, when the stars aligned, make love. That's what I imagined life was like. But 8 years into our marriage, everything fell apart. You know, my wife's profession puts her in the company of attractive people every day, models, actresses, and the kind of faces you see on billboards and magazine covers. And I had no idea at the time that she enjoyed putting their talents to the test. Do you understand what I mean? I was a naive spouse standing in the kitchen, putting my heart into the meals I cooked for her, constantly waiting, while she was out drinking at the most desired watering holes, socializing with individuals who looked like they walked out of a dream. But I never questioned her, not once. Why should I? She made certain of it. She showed me affection in all the ways that mattered, or seemed to matter. She brought me out to supper, and I always paid up the bill, of course. We watched movies together, laughing and hugging as if we had no worries in the world. She did an excellent job covering her traces. Every falsehood is polished to perfection, and every excuse is meticulously positioned like chess pieces. However, as Henry Adams noted in 1785, the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry, in this instance, with women. So it all began with a young guy called Liam Hart. He was the kind of man who believed the world owed him something, an arrogant, self-assured blogger riding the tide of instant social media celebrity. He had a solid following, I'll admit, but everything about him screamed flash in the pan. I first met him at one of Olivia's work parties. Shed urged I come along, claiming it'd be fun, and I wanted to be there to support her. But the minute I came in, I felt like a prop in a room full of individuals who want attention. Then there came Oliver, marching through the throng like he owned the place, flashing a smug grin to everyone he saw. He exuded confidence, as if he knew he was the most important person in the room. When he came over to introduce himself, I knew he was danger. He extended his hand, and when I shook it, he squeezed harder than needed, as if he was measuring me up. I wasn't about to give him the upper hand, however. I returned the favor by applying just enough pressure to make him flinch, and I saw a little quiver in his face before he drew back and tucked his hand into his pocket. Then, with all arrogance in the world, he went to Olivia and asked her to dance. She went with him. My gaze remained fixed on them while they danced. Oliver maintained a respectful distance. No erratic movements, no roaming hands, just two individuals dancing to the music. Olivia returned to my side in less than 2 minutes, smiling as if nothing had occurred. It put me at ease, but not entirely. To relieve her anxiety, I grabbed her hand and brought her to the dance floor myself. Several hours passed. As the celebration progressed, I decided to take a little break in the men's room. That's when I saw him again. Oliver is resting on the sink, his tie unfastened, his smile arrogant even now. When he noticed me, he straightened up and went up, shaky on his feet but full of misguided confidence. "You think you're big, huh? Think you're someone special?" He mumbled, his breath smelling of cheap whiskey and inflated ego. I looked at him, displeased, and gently instructed him to back off. But then he grinned, came in close enough to make my blood boil, and remarked, "The mole on her inner thigh looks amazing." At that point, everything else dissolved into white noise. His words lingered in the air like a taunt, and I understood precisely what he meant. I turned quickly, closed the gap between us, and smacked him right in the face. He didn't even have time to respond before collapsing to the floor, unconscious. I stood there for a time, my fists still clenched, watching Oliver stretch down on the floor like a crumpled marionette. My pulse was pounding, not from exercise, but from the weight of what I had just accomplished. I won't lie. it felt amazing, but I knew better than to let that sensation last. If news spread that I had knocked out a person at a business party, particularly someone like him, the consequences would not be limited to me. It would also land on Olivia. Bad publicity was the last thing any of us needed. So I took a big breath, straightened my tie, and exited the lavatory to locate the closest attendant. When I saw him, I motioned for him to come over. Mr. Fox had a little too much to drink, I remarked in a calm, even tone. Could you do me a favor and call a cab to make sure he gets home safely? The attendant agreed, and I handed him a couple of dollars to guarantee he took care of it right away. As far as I was concerned, Oliver's night, and his presence in my life, had ended. I grabbed Olivia's hand and informed her it was time to go, and we went home. She seemed unconcerned, speaking about how well the party went and how much so-and-so enjoyed the canapés. I nodded, but my thoughts were elsewhere, reliving Liam's mocking words, the mole on her inner thigh. Was he just attempting to get under my skin, or was there more to it? Was Olivia cheating on me? Had I been blind, preparing for her, waiting for her, and loving her while she humiliated me? I couldn't get rid of the concept, and the more I tried, the louder it became in my thoughts. I needed to know. When we reached home, she took off her shoes and offered me a nice grin. Normally, I would have kissed her and even brought her to bed, but that night I couldn't bring myself to do so. Instead, I told her I was weary and needed to sleep. She did not push me. He just kissed my cheek and went to bed. That was the last time I used an excuse not to touch her. The remainder of the night, I lay in quiet, looking at the ceiling, my mind racing. My thoughts would not quit. Every laugh she'd enjoyed with someone else, every second I hadn't been at her side, all began to seem like proof. But I wouldn't have to ponder too long. The suspense was about to end. 2 days later, while I was tidying up after breakfast, my phone rang. At first, I assumed it was simply a notice or a normal message, but as I opened it, my chest clenched. It was a snapshot of Olivia's bra. It was draped over a bedpost that I did not identify. The accompanying text was brief, taunting, more to come. I gazed at the television, my gut tightening. My hands felt heavy, almost too heavy to grasp the phone, but I couldn't let it go. Moments afterward, another picture emerged. This time, her clothing were all over the floor. My mind raced as I urgently tried to make sense of what I was seeing, convincing myself that there had to be an explanation. But the following snapshot dashed any remaining optimism. It was Olivia, her nude back lit by gentle light. She was sleeping on her stomach, her head turned away from the camera, fully oblivious that a photo had been taken. The closeness of the shooting, the transgression, chilled my blood. The last message read, "She's excellent in bed. Since you can't please her, I will." I laid down my phone, my hands quivering, and gazed blankly at the commitment band ID removed earlier to wash the dishes. It seemed heavier than ever now, like if it were made of lead. Questions raced through my thoughts, each one stinging harder than the previous. Should I fight for her? Should I expose her and damage her reputation? How long was this going on? Oliver could hardly have captivated her in one morning. This was not a spontaneous event. No, it had to be something deeper, something that had been simmering for a long time. The idea of her laying on my face night after night as I waited at home made my stomach turn. I wanted clarification, a plan. So I followed what I believed was the right course of action. I took up the phone and contacted my attorney. He did not ask many questions, just instructed me to come to his office that afternoon. A few hours later, I found myself seated across from him. The room was filled with the peaceful hum of air conditioning and the subtle aroma of leather furniture. I lay everything out, the images, the letters, and the treachery. He listened without interrupting, nodding sometimes, and his countenance was inscrutable. When I was done, I leaned back, hoping for his opinion. After a minute, he leaned forward. "Does your wife do any modeling work?" he said, his tone measured. I frowned. "No, not that I've ever heard of." I corrected myself. "And these photos don't look like they were taken in a studio. They're too personal, too candid." He sat back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "All right, we can file the separation documents, no problem. But I hope you're ready for what comes next." I frowned. "What do you mean?" I inquired, my tone harsh. He exhaled and kept his eyes steady. "The old man will be on to you the very next day." I gazed at him, feeling a rush of rage and shame rising in my chest. "So, what do you suggest?" I said, my voice dripping with cynicism. "Should I find a novelty store, buy a cap with horns, and get a gold necklace that says Cuck #1? Patrick grinned softly, as if he had seen this type of wrath before. I can understand how you feel, he answered calmly. If that's what you want, the papers will be ready in 8 days. He hesitated, leaning forward slightly. What do you plan to do once I file? As my thoughts raced, I looked out the window at the city skyline, which was blurry. Once I file for divorce, there will be consequences, I continued, my voice measured but determined. My trust will pull all the money from the production house. She'll run straight to her daddy. Patrick nodded and waited for me to continue. I allowed the stillness to linger for a minute, the weight of my words settling between us. Finally, I returned to him, my demeanor icy and determined. Daddy will come looking for me, I muttered, but I let the phrase go as I stared at the metropolis. I won't be available to speak. They'll take care of my disappearance and the old man. I rose up, brushing imaginary dust from my clothes. Just get the papers ready. Patrick gave me a quick nod, his expression opaque as usual. I turned and exited his office, the sound of my sneakers echoing down the corridor. My mind was a whirlwind, with one idea clashing with the next, but one thing was certain. I had made my choice. When I arrived home, Emily was sitting on the sofa with her legs tucked beneath her. She glanced up with the brilliant grin she was known for, which had previously captivated my heart, but now seemed empty. "Honey, where were you?" she said, her tone warm and teasing. "I'm so hungry I could eat you up." Before I could react, she sprang to her feet and approached me, putting her arms around my neck. She leaned forward and attempted to playfully peck on my neck. Her laughing was gentle and inviting, but instead of bringing her closer as I normally do, I gently held her back and rested my hand on her shoulders. "I'm tired," I replied, keeping my tone calm. "I need to lay down. Order something for yourself." "I'm not hungry." She pouted her lips, creating that familiar tiny scowl, but I didn't wait for her to object. I went past her and headed directly to our room. Once inside, I shut the door, leaned against it for a second, and took a long breath. The weight of everything weighed down on me as I removed my clothing and entered the shower. The hot water poured over me, but it did not wipe away the tumult within. I lingered longer than usual, allowing the steam to fill the room and fog the mirrors. Finally, I walked out, dried myself, and crawled into bed, looking at the ceiling until fatigue drew me down. The next day, I awoke to a fresh message. I didn't even have to check the sender. It was him, idiot boy. Sure enough, the first one was a photo of Emily's mole, the one on her inner thigh, with the caption, "It looks excellent." I simply kissed it. My blood boiled. My hands trembled, but I didn't hurl my phone across the room as I had intended to. No, I just sat there, gazing at it for a minute. I couldn't give him the gratification of seeing me unravel. I had to remain calm. Then the next message arrived. This time, there was a video. I witnessed him having sex with her while taunting me with a smile at the camera. With my stomach churning, I put down my phone and went out of the home. I wanted to clear my mind, to escape the crushing sensation of betrayal. As I went, I realized something. I knew this wasn't Emily's first romance. It could not be. There had to be others ID you never know about. The notion ate at me, yet curiously, I no longer felt wounded. I didn't feel anything. I wasn't going to waste any more time. The marriage was finished. I was finished. So I concentrated on keeping my emotions under control. I was determined not to let anything slide during the following 8 days. I had a plan, and I was not going to allow anybody, even Emily, disrupt it. Emily woke me up the following day with a happy voice that was light and almost mischievous. "Honey, your birthday is only 5 days away," she remarked, lovingly putting her hands on my chest. "Tell me, what do you want for your birthday?" I gazed at her with firm eyes and responded, "I want a loyal and faithful wife." For a short second, I saw her grin waver and her eyes flicker uneasily, almost as if she was struggling to find the proper words. She instantly recovered her calm and smiled back at me, but her look was off, forced. "Do you not have a loving and caring wife, my love?" she said, almost pleadingly. "I love you with all my heart, and I cannot imagine a day in my life without you." I gazed at her for a long time, examining her expression. I'd heard those words many times before, but they no longer had the same weight. I smiled back at her, but it was not sincere. "Yes, dear," I said, my voice serene but distant. "We all want a lot of things in life. Some we get, and some we don't." I got out of bed without saying anything, went to the bathroom, and closed the door behind me. I didn't bother cooking breakfast for her, as I always did. It was the first time in our 7-year relationship that I hadn't cooked for her. The concept of that did not even bother me. I got my running shoes, walked outdoors, and went for a morning jog. I needed the air, movement, and silence to get away from it all. Things had suddenly transformed. Something had changed within me. I was not just upset. I was done. I wasn't going to play public relations anymore. Emily came home that evening and called for me. I wasn't at home, so she phoned my phone. I responded, attempting to keep my tone casual. "Where are you, honey?" she inquired. "I'm home. I need you here." "I'm at a bar, watching the football game," I said, maintaining an even tone. "You should order something for yourself. He'll be late." I hung up before she could say anything further. I did not want to hear her justifications or defend anything. The truth wasn't important anymore. When I returned that night, it was late. I didn't bother going inside our room. Instead, I walked directly to the guest bedroom and slumped into the bed. The stillness felt better there. I wasn't prepared to face her yet. The following morning, Emily came in to wake me up. "Why were you late last night?" she said, her tone laced with anxiety. "And why weren't you in our bed? Why were you in here?" I simply laid there, facing the wall and appearing to be half asleep. "Had a bit too much last night," I replied, my voice flat. "Wanted to spread out and sleep, didn't want to disturb you." I could feel her gaze on me, her anxiety rising, but I didn't care. She then asked me the question I'd been waiting for. "Are you going to cook breakfast?" I did not even glance at her. "I want to sleep a little longer," I whispered, moving away from her. "You can order something. He'll be up later." I could detect the small displeasure in her voice, but I didn't mind. She was already aware that something was amiss. I had stopped cooking for her and doing things without thinking twice. 5 days had gone, and I hadn't made her breakfast once. She could no longer have it both ways. That evening, Emily phoned me. She stated she could be late and I should not wait for her. I just said, okay. I didn't want to pretend any longer, nor did I want to give her any more of my time. My phone started buzzing a few minutes later. It was a message. My heart fell when I opened it and saw the photograph. It was an ultrasound. I zoomed closer, hardly able to absorb anything, but the name at the top was easily identifiable. It said Emily Steele. Then the text arrived. "I placed a baby in her, and you couldn't do anything about it. Are you really a man?" Some of you may question if that challenge upset me. Yes, it did. I could feel the fire building in my chest, and I wanted to do something, anything, about it. But was I going to respond violently, like an angry idiot? Not a chance. I had other plans for that kid. Something that would catch him totally off guard. Something he never imagined. The video I got that night struck me like a freight train. Emily's face was easily identifiable. She was loving the idiot's attention. My heart sank. I set down my phone, the weight of it all bearing down on me. I did not go home that night. I slept at a hotel near the pub. I wanted some space, a break from everything. Emily contacted me numerous times, but I did not respond. I couldn't cope with her straight away. The following morning, I was still struggling to keep my emotions under control when I heard a knock on the door. When I opened it, 5 guys in black suits were there, barring my departure. I knew Leonard would eventually become involved. The situation was worsening. One of them spoke coldly and directly. "We'll wait for you outside, Mr. Steele." I did not argue. I told them I will be out in a few minutes. However, one of the guys, who was taller than the others, entered the room without saying anything. He proceeded carefully, searching the room with precision, inspecting the bathroom to ensure nothing was out of order. Once finished, he spoke into his earpiece. "Room is empty. Mr. Steele is alone in the room. So, the old man thinks I am cheating on his daughter?" I inquired. He went away without saying a word. I dressed and headed home. 3 black SUVs followed me the whole way. When I got home, Emily was sitting on the sofa. I could tell Emily was in pain. Her eyes were puffy and red, with tears streaming on her cheeks. She raced to me the moment I went in, her voice shaking. "Where were you? Why didn't you answer the calls?" I did not respond promptly. I fell onto the sofa, feeling the weight of everything land on my shoulders. I was fatigued and emotionally drained. Finally, I spoke, and my voice was flat. I was too drunk to drive, so I went to the motel and slept there. Her face contorted in agony. "You never used to drink, and now you have started drinking. You used to cook for me, and now you haven't cooked for me in days." She continued talking, attempting to make sense of the changes, but I let the words go past my ears. She then said in a hoarse voice, "I called the office. They'll be with you all day today. Tomorrow we'll celebrate your birthday." I rose up to go to the restroom because I needed space. But before I could take a move, she gripped me hard and pressed her body against mine. I did not react. I did not want to. I gently moved away, pushing her just enough to get some space. I need to go empty my bladder, I said, going past her without looking back. After I finished in the restroom, I dressed and went for my morning run. Emily looked at me and questioned, "Isn't it too late for a run?" I looked at her, my voice full of contempt. "It's never too late to run for your own good." She may have picked up on the tone because she instantly added, "We'll join you." Please wait. Within minutes, she had changed into her running shorts and sneakers, and we were gone. Now, I take running seriously. I may be a chef, but I work out every day, so I ran faster than her, deliberately maintaining a space between us. She was usually behind me, not near me, just how I wanted it. I could see she was fighting to keep up, but I was not going to slack down. After 3 laps, I saw her seated on a bench. When I got to her, she yelled, "Stop. I'm done." I smiled, my voice cool. "I guess you should go. They'll always be out of reach." The signals I was conveying were obvious, and I could see she was beginning to grasp. She had now realized that I was aware of her behavior. I saw Emily return home and continued to run, pushing myself even farther. To maintain control, I needed to empty my mind. When I eventually arrived home, I dressed in a great suit. I was just about to leave when I heard her ask, "Honey, where are you going?" I turned to gaze at her, my voice calm and steady. "I have some business to take care of." She was astonished, and her eyes widened. "You have business outside the home?" I shot her a sharp look. "You might have forgotten, but your company runs on the money my trust invests in it every year. Without that, your company will fold in a matter of days. My trust manager asked me to check some details. Apparently, investing in you has not been profitable so far." Her expression twisted slightly as terror set in. "Oh, honey, the company has lost some money due to some shows that failed." I didn't say anything. Instead, I turned to face the door and said, "I know, honey. A lot of things failed." She opened her lips, perhaps to say something again, but I locked the door behind me and walked away. I went to my trust manager's office and informed him clearly, "Pull out all funding from Emily's company starting tomorrow." I stared him in the eyes, ensuring that he realized the weight of my words. "They'll be out of the country. Here is my destination. If you leak my whereabouts, they'll have you removed from your position and they'll sue you for leaking sensitive information." He nodded without hesitation. I knew him well, had trusted him for years, and was certain that he would fulfill his promise. I went to my lawyer and informed him it was going to be done at my home, and I wanted to view the footage of my wife being served. I gave him my new phone number and requested him to keep it to himself. He handed me the package ID requested him to make for Emily. I grabbed the package and headed home. When I arrived home, Emily was not there. I took a deep breath and tried to focus myself. The home seemed weirdly silent without her. It wasn't long before my phone chimed. She sent a message, but this time it wasn't simply a text. I opened it and saw a video. The message that followed read, "It's your birthday, but I'm eating the cake." The footage was as clear as day. He was pouring whipped cream on her and licking it off her skin. I immediately closed the video. I took a minute to cool myself before confirming every message she and her partner had given me. I submitted everything to my lawyer and sent a copy to a phone number I had kept under the elderly man's name, Leonard. The messages would be his concern now, not mine. By now, you're probably wondering who this elderly guy is. Marcus Brooks, a former Marine turned drug lord, oversees operations from Caldas, Ecuador. With activities spanning 34 nations, his presence was always felt, even from a long distance. He is both clever and brutal. I know what you're thinking. Why didn't I simply act out my rage and terminate the foolish boy? Well, if I had, he would have died without my lifting a finger. But it would have drawn Leonard into the picture, and I knew better than to antagonize him. If he knew I had hurt his daughter's lover, I would not have been able to leave her. Leonard would not accept treachery, and I could not risk his anger. So I had to stay cool, maintain my distance, and go before he could react. His affection for his daughter was obvious, and the 5 men that arrived at the hotel verified it. They were there because she had phoned him. Without a doubt, I grabbed my passport, a few crucial papers, and turned off my phone. I gently put it in the special box I had brought with me, which I had been preparing for this occasion. I took off my commitment ring, holding it for a minute before placing it into the box as well, the final remnant of my previous existence. I then scribbled down my phone's security code and put it inside the box, ensuring that no trace of me remained. I took one final glance around before opening the door and walking out, closing it behind me. I walked away, knowing it was for good. Now, let's look at the story from Emila's perspective. I married John because he was honest and a wonderful person. I adored him with all of my being. So why did I cheat on him? I'm always surrounded by males who are really attractive. These are the guys every woman dreams of. Charming, successful, and difficult to ignore. Every opportunity to be with them I seized. The first time I cheated was with an aspiring singer. He did not want to, but his contract was on the line. If he denied me, his career may be gone. He did not have a choice. It was enjoyable, in a sense. I enjoyed the power of being able to control these guys and having them when I wanted. But, despite it all, John was the one guy who meant anything to me. I kept John at home and loved him dearly, but at the workplace, I chose any guy I wanted. I realize it's difficult to grasp, but that's how I was. My father is someone I've always respected. He may be a drug kingpin, but he is a guy with principles. My father never wanted to live this life. He had always desired a quiet existence free from the violence that afflicted his planet. However, after my mother was murdered in the shooting, everything changed. I was a tiny child, hardly able to comprehend what was going on, but I remember the day well. It was in the center of Caldas, a city notorious for its lawlessness. We were on vacation that day. My mother and father were caught in the crossfire of warring groups, and a strike intended for my father turned into something much worse. Bullets blasted through our car's windows, breaking glass and shredding flesh. My mother passed away in his arms, her last breath departing her in a world that had already taken so much. Following that, everything changed. My father vowed revenge. He was not going to sit back and let them trash his planet. He was going to take it back. The guy I previously perceived as caring and compassionate has transformed into a figure of terror, a brutal force. He eliminated the whole group responsible for my mother's killing, leaving no trace left. I've heard the tales, the murmurs, about how he became a guy that even the most dangerous criminals dreaded. Nobody dared to cross him again, and the world took note. But, in the end, my mother's murder was more than simply a trigger for his revenge. It was the start of a life he had never desired for himself or me. He kept me in the United States while he remained in Caldas. Now, the error I made was bringing Liam Hart into my bed. What I didn't understand at the time was that he would be the cause of my marriage's breakdown. Oliver constantly pressuring me to leave my spouse, claiming he was holding me back. I know for a fact that he's the only one who is holding me where I am today, Oliver would often declare. He continued harassing me, telling me that John was holding me back, and that I could do so much better. He would say things like, "You deserve better than him. He's not enough for someone like you." But I knew the truth. I knew John was the one who had been there for me through everything. Without him, I would not be where I am now. He believed in me when no one else did. Without his support, I would not have the profession or life I enjoy now. But I never confessed this in public. To everyone else, I needed to be the strong, independent lady. I couldn't let anybody see the reality of the situation. One evening, as we were having sex in his bed, Oliver attempted to berate John again, telling me that I needed to leave him behind. I'm not sure what happened to me at that moment, but I couldn't take it any longer. The things he uttered about John, the guy who had only been nice to me, were too much to stomach. So I smacked Oliver across the face. It was something I had never done before, yet it seemed natural. "You would be lucky if you could be 1/10 the man John is," I informed him, my voice calm but angry. I meant every word. John was a fine guy, and Oliver was nothing but a pampered, egotistical brat attempting to bring down the person who really mattered. I suppose that should have been the end of it. I should have ended the affair right then and made it obvious that I wasn't going to listen to Oliver longer. I should have walked away from him and remained faithful to my spouse, but I did not. Instead, I allowed it to remain. Maybe I wasn't ready to let go of the part of me that craved excitement, affirmation, and the pleasure Oliver appeared to provide. Maybe I wanted to keep playing the game, even if it was gradually killing everything I valued. I eventually chose to end the affair when I discovered I was pregnant. It should have been a wake-up call, a clear indication that I needed to organize my life. But Oliver managed to persuade me to stay going just a little longer. He told me it wasn't the appropriate time to terminate things, that we could work it out, and that I deserved better. And I somehow bought into it. I consented, even knowing it was wrong. But then John began to change. It seemed subtle at first. He stopped cooking for me, something I never believed would happen. He used to be the one who prepared our dinners, taking great care in them. But then he stopped doing it. Then came the silent jabs, the tiny words, the way he glanced at me on occasion. It seemed like he was attempting to push me away. I could feel it. The true turning point occurred when I went for a run with him. My old John would have been at my side, supporting me and ensuring I kept up with him. But this time, he did not even look back. I was falling behind, but he didn't care. I realized immediately that I had made a mistake. He was not the guy I married anymore. I had shattered something between us, and it was too late to repair it. I worried when John didn't come home. I tried contacting him, but he didn't pick up. I wasn't sure what to think, and panic crept into my chest. I had to phone my father. Within 40 minutes, they had traced him down to a hotel. My father was outraged, asking that they find out precisely what John was doing. If John's cheating, he joked, they'll kill him right there. The notion of John with someone else made me ill, but I knew he would never do that to me. They examined the room, of course, and reviewed the surveillance video. It was difficult to breathe while waiting for them to confirm what I already knew. John did not cheat. They watched the tape, which proved that he entered alone. I felt so relieved, yet I couldn't escape the guilt. The changes in him, the distance between us, all of it was my fault, and I had no clue how bad things would go. Then came the day of his birthday. ID decided to celebrate it with John in an attempt to mend our relationship. But once again, I succumbed to my cravings. I went to Oliver's house, unable to resist the temptation, and we had some wild sex. It was thrilling, but deep down I knew I was betraying the guy I loved. After that, I did something else I felt was essential, something that I hoped would mark the beginning of a new chapter. I had the baby aborted. I had persuaded myself that I would be true to John and that we would create a family together. But that day, I made a decision that would change everything. When I returned home, however, I was confronted with an emptiness I was not expecting. The home seemed chilly and abandoned. I yelled for him, thinking he was only out of sight, but there was no response. Panic set in as I checked every room, but he was nowhere to be found. Then I saw it, a black box, beautifully packed, resting on the table. My pulse raced as I moved closer to it, uncertain what I might discover. I gingerly opened it, and there it was, his phone. My breath became locked in my throat. Why did he leave his phone behind? There was also a letter written with a pen, although it made no sense. Then I discovered 2 envelopes. The smaller one grabbed my attention initially. I opened it, my fingers trembling. Inside, there was a note that stopped my heart. I know everything, and now it's over. Tell your guy Toy that he can have you. The remorse, the humiliation, and everything I'd done to him were all set out in front of me. John knew, and it was over for me. I swiftly opened the bigger packet, my hands quivering with rage. Inside, there were photographs of me and Oliver, as well as text messages between him and John. The treachery was obvious. My heart was beating as I felt the wrath grow up within me. Oliver had ruined my marriage. He took away the one thing that meant everything to me, John. The wrath within me was overwhelming, and I resolved that he would pay for what he had done. I'd make certain of that. As I stood there fuming, the doorbell rang. My heart skipped a beat, and for a second, I thought it was John. Perhaps he had returned. Perhaps he has forgiven me. I ran to the door, almost too rapidly, and flung it open. But it was not John. A guy in a ragged suit stood there with an inscrutable look. He looked me up and down and said, "Are you Mrs. Emily Steele?" I nodded, scarcely able to speak, hoping without hope that John was following him. Yes. He gave me a manila envelope without saying a word. "Here, you have been served," he replied, taking a photo of me before turning and leaving. I stood paralyzed, unable to process what had just occurred. I gently closed the door, my legs giving way under me. I fell on the floor immediately in the hallway. A few minutes later, I had the courage to open the envelope. My hands trembled as I slipped out the papers. It was exactly what I had feared, separation docs. The motive was adultery. I felt my heart break into a million pieces. I could not sleep that night. My mind was racing, like if everything was rushing down on me at once. I tossed and turned, repeating every moment, every error I'd made. I finally couldn't handle it anymore. I needed to speak to someone. I needed my father, even though I knew he couldn't make things better. I picked up my phone and called his number, feeling the knot in my throat tighten as the line rang. When he eventually picked up, I didn't know where to begin, so I simply told him everything. Every detail, error, and treachery. I told him what I had done, how I had wrecked everything with John, broken my marriage, and introduced Oliver into our life. There was a lengthy pause on the other end. I could feel the frustration and disappointment oozing through the phone. When he finally spoke, his tone was chilly and distant. "That boy you were sleeping with has been taken care of," he continued, his tone bland. "And I am quite disappointed in you. Perhaps my karma has wrecked my family as well. I do not blame John for what he has done. I have resolved that no harm will come to John, and I will not assist you in finding him." I was startled, my heart sinking with each word. The hush that followed seemed oppressive. He didn't even give me an opportunity to answer. With that, he hung up. The call fell silent in my ear, leaving me in the stillness of my own shame. The following morning, I received a call from my workplace. My secretary, June, was on the other end. Her voice was strained, and I knew something was wrong. "Emily, Liam Hart has died. They discovered him hanging at his house. The police claim he did it to himself." The word struck me like a blow in the stomach. I heard June's voice, but everything seemed muffled. My thoughts went blank, and all I could think was, it should have been me. I was the one who started it all. I was the one who destroyed everything, and now ID lost it all. I barely got through the remainder of the call before hanging up. I could not take any more of it. I needed to locate John. I had to set things right, but no one wanted to assist me. I phoned my father, but he refused. His lawyer was just as frigid, and even John's trust manager refused to bend. They all refused to assist me or guide me in the proper way. My own father refused to raise a finger. After a year of relentless bickering, the divorce was finalized. ID lost all I had ever worked for. Everything ID ever cared about was gone. My firm had to close because I ran out of money. My personal life was in tatters, and I didn't have anybody left. I was alone. I earned it everything. I chose to go see my father in Caldas, thinking that being near to him would provide some comfort, despite the fact that I knew he had been distant. He was neither warm or friendly, but he did offer me a room in his home, which was plenty. At least I wasn't entirely alone. I hadn't seen John in almost a year, and I thought about him every day. The emptiness in my chest never completely went away. One day, I decided to grab some fresh air and clear my head. As I went around the city, attempting to escape the crushing thoughts, I came upon a restaurant. I couldn't believe it when I saw him, John. He was there, in a chef's costume, preparing with such precision and elegance. It was bizarre, but then something else grabbed my attention. A lady came up to him, smiled, and kissed him. My heart broke at that moment. Seeing him with someone else ripped me up. However, it wasn't the worst part. As I remained motionless, trying to figure out what I was seeing, I recognized my father seated at one of the tables. He was enjoying his lunch, unfazed by what was happening. I was devastated. I've never felt more alone. My own father deceived me. I couldn't keep it in anymore. I raced toward the table, my heart thumping in my chest and my thoughts a flurry of rage and pain. My feet were moving before I knew it. "How could you, John?" I demanded, my voice quivering with rage. "How dare you? I wanted to harm everyone, him, her, and my father. How dare she kiss him? How could they take him away from me?" The wrath was engulfing me, and I could feel the fire flow through my veins as I pushed past the guard who had the audacity to attempt to stop me. Without thinking, I took his revolver from its holster and leveled it at her. She smiled, oblivious to what was about to unfold. She did not deserve him. She did not deserve the love I lost. I tightened my hold on the pistol, my finger aching to pull the trigger, but before I could think, there was a loud boom. My universe imploded into itself, and everything went dark. Now, let's look at the story from John's perspective. The sound of the gunshot echoed in my ears, too loud and harsh. I saw her fall in front of me, her body crumpling on the floor. It didn't seem genuine. My mind couldn't handle it. Was she dead? Was this really happening? But suddenly I sensed his presence, Leonard. He took a step forward, smoke still rising from the rifle in his palm. His stare was steady, icy, and unwavering. He put his hand on my shoulder. His touch was surprisingly kind, yet it did little to calm the roaring tempest inside of me. "She will live," he stated in a quiet, forceful tone, almost like a demand. I gazed at him, still trying to make sense of everything. "Why?" My voice quivered, unaware of what I was asking. Leonard gave me a long, weighty stare. "You have been hidden too long, son. It is time to quit jogging. You need to return to your life. You and Emily have my blessing. Get married and have a family. I will take care of Emily here." The ambulance came immediately and carried Emily away, her gaze still fixed on me. It was almost as if she was trying to tell me something with that glance, but I couldn't figure it out. I watched her go, and everything seemed unreal. The following morning, I packed my luggage. It seemed like time was passing through my fingers, yet I knew I needed to go. After what had transpired, I couldn't remain any longer. When I provided Leonard the proof before my divorce with his daughter, he contacted me at my new number. "You cannot hide from me, son," he continued. The next thing he said was that he was sorry for his daughter's actions and understood why we were divorcing. He said that he would have done the same thing. Then he begged me to come to Caldas and remain, promising that Emily would never find me here. A few days later, I traveled to Caldas, hesitant but eager to welcome whatever happened next. Leonard wasn't the kind to provide aid without expecting anything in return, but he didn't say much about it at the time. Instead, he offered me a position as a cook in a restaurant. It was straightforward, and it seemed like the greatest thing I could do for myself. Cooking had always been my love, and it felt nice to return to it without the distractions. I soon met Emily, and she was unlike anybody I'd ever known. She was down to earth, grounded, and came from a modest family. Her simplicity was pleasant, and I became more attracted to her. We began dating, and as time passed, I realized I wanted to pursue things further. I wanted to marry her. I could picture a future with her, a life free of the turmoil and manipulation I had previously experienced. It seemed like a fresh beginning, something I hadn't experienced in a long time. Well, here I am, 5 years later. I still cook for my wife, Emily, but we've struck a balance. She cooks for me at least once a day. Our kid, Ethan, is already a year old. He's healthy and developing quickly. It's astonishing how much pleasure he brings into our life, and how everything seems exactly perfect. There are times when I forget about the past, when Emily and all the upheaval seem remote. But then Leonard will phone me. He calls often and requests to see photographs of Ethan. I know it's his way of keeping an eye on me and being connected to my life, even from a distance. A few days ago, he phoned again. He told me that Emily was still not over me. He informed me that she had been placed in a mental hospital. Deep down, I knew something like this was possible. It was almost as if the last chapter of that horror had been completed. Emily's fixation eventually wrecked her, and she's now in a position where she can't harm anybody, even herself. It was unusual to receive that news after all this time. I didn't know how to handle it, but one thing was certain. I was finished with that chapter of my life. I'd moved on. I had Emily and Ethan, and that was all I needed for now. Years passed, and life seemed to settle into a peaceful routine. The world that had before been riddled with instability, treachery, and continual tension had changed. I had found serenity in the most basic things: cooking, caring for my family, and reconstructing my life away from the tragedy of my past. Emily and I, despite the chaos, had moved on. She now assists me in running the restaurant, a new chapter that none of us had anticipated but that suited us well. Ethan had developed into an inquisitive and happy youngster, and the household we shared with him was full of laughter and love. I had learned a lot in the years that followed. I had learned to forgive myself for my faults, and I had discovered that even the darkest scars might heal with time. I also learned the value of understanding when to walk away from poisonous relationships, haunting memories, and circumstances that no longer served me. My life was now based on what was most important: the friendships I had formed, the love I had discovered, and the fortitude to carry ahead despite all that had happened. Then one day, I got a letter. It came from Leonard. He wanted to know how I was doing and how Ethan was doing. There was something in his remarks, a calm understanding that had been missing before. He had always been a man of action, but after all these years of power conflicts and misery, it seemed that he was now seeking serenity as well. Emily once told me that life is about balance: the good, terrible, lost, and found. It is true. What I had assumed was the conclusion of my narrative had really been the beginning. There were days when recollections of the past would resurface, but they no longer had the ability to torment me. I had created a new life and, in doing so, let go of the previous one. So, with a last, quiet commitment to the past, I went on. The path had been long, and the lessons had been hard to learn, but I was no longer defined by the anguish I had carried for so long. Now, I was a man defined by the love I provided, the family I protected, and the tranquility I had finally discovered. Can you forgive a treachery like John's? Let us know in the comments, and remember to like and subscribe.